You know what your problem is?
I'm angry that I have to be here to testify about the weaponization of the FBI and DOJ.
Your problem is you think this is about justice, and it's not about justice. It's about mitigating damage.
There was a deep rot within the FBI.
They said that the FBI suspended me in order to financially devastate us and leave us stranded in a new city without any support.
What ultimately kind of was the final straw for me was I got poisoned twice.
The Justice Department and the FBI, they don't get promoted by not charging you. They don't get promoted by not ruining your life.
Look, everyone, we're getting more January 6th subjects. At this point, if the worst of the worst haven't been arrested, like, what are you doing?
With FBI agents being taken off child sex trafficking cases to SWAT people's houses.
I think we all know, James Comey, that you're a great storyteller because you made up the entire story about Crossfire Hurricane.
As far as the allegations of CIA hacking into Senate computers, nothing could be further from the truth. We wouldn't do that.
They were hell-bent on destroying me. It didn't take very long, maybe 4 months, before the FBI ended up raiding my home and began a couple of years worth of retaliatory harassment.
Several FBI whistleblowers, they call themselves the suspendables.
It was as if my name was toxic waste.
A lot of them are having trouble making ends meet and taking care of their families. And that's one reason, of course, why the FBI and Department of Justice are punishing them. To set an example,
I would have to fight communist-like totalitarian tactics, particularly working for the Central Intelligence Agency, where I'm supposed to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. Instead, I was supposed to defend and protect the bureaucracy first and foremost.
if any of you are thinking of blowing the whistles, look at these boys. They can't feed their families anymore. So think twice and you better fall in line.
Good evening. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and this is Steel News, and you are entering the war zone. That's right. The surveillance industrial state has enveloped every aspect of our lives. You look at all of the military industrial complexes, all of the food and educational and healthcare industrial complexes. I mean, every industrial complex. They are all being architected, orchestrated, managed, and frankly, put at attack against we the people. That's right. The United States government is the enemy in the room. They are at war with we the people, and they are run by a group of thugs that have been called the deep state gangsters by, well, just about everybody who understands what's going on. One particular gentleman who understands it very well has a new movie out, Deep State Gangsters. His name is Pedro Israel Ortega, and he joins me right now. Pedro, it is great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening to help my audience understand what this movie is about. This is an intense conversation, frankly, and it's a conversation that needs to be had by everybody in the room so they can see the world through the lens in which we need to see it. We're not managed by we the people anymore. We're managed by AI and the industrial complex. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ann, for having me this evening on your show. And absolutely, we have a deep state run amok, thugs, criminal-like activity that has run rampant for decades and has culminated into these times that we live in. And the Deep State Gangsters documentary, it tells people exactly what it's like from an insider perspective. Myself and 3 other whistleblowers, John Kiriakou, the CIA torture whistleblower, Garrett O'Boyle, blew the whistle on the FBI abuses of power regarding J6 and other issues. And we also have Nate Kane, the Uranium One whistleblower. So we were all internal to these organizations, to CIA, to FBI, and we tell our own firsthand stories, what we witnessed firsthand. So you basically are getting the view from insiders who saw it, witnessed it, and we tell the world exactly what we saw. And in this film, we do have 2 expert commentators, Lee Smith and J. Michael Waller, who had some context to the story.
So, this is what, frankly, the American people are starting to wake up to and understand. And I'm going to say this. I would say maybe 30-40% of the American public understands this at some level, is aware of it. But so much of the public is still asleep. So much of the public is going along to get along. And it's getting, extremely concerning to those of us that have been hyper-focused on getting President Trump elected. We saw the steal in 2021. Many of us were up close and personal with what happened with January 6th. General Michael Flynn is a personal friend, and I've worked with him, traveled with him on the Reawaken America tour. He is openly talking about the surveillance industrial complex, the intelligence industrial complex. And this is the issue that I see as overarching across everything. And whether it's the United Nations, whether it's the next pandemic, scandemic, the WHO, it's because we have this espionage and this Five Eyes organization. I believe that the world is frankly anesthetized and controlled by this deep state gangsters. And it doesn't just reside here in the United States, although the organizations you've mentioned, the FBI and the CIA, are clearly at the helm. They have perpetrated crimes and covered crimes for the deep state gangsters for decades. So, I'm a solution person, Pedro, and I'm gravely concerned about the direction this country is going, even with a Trump election in 2024. God willing, he's elected. I see the infiltration as complete, and I'm not sure how we unwind all this. So I kick it back to you. Where do you want to start in terms of, if you had an ability to deconstruct or dismantle one outfit in the intelligence community, where would you start?
We have to start with the FBI and the Department of Justice, because they are the ones who have the ability to target and prosecute Americans, American citizens, legal residents, and they're the ones that can wreck anyone's life, like they've done with General Flynn, for example. So we have to start at the foundations of our legal institutions, which is the Department of Justice, and their enforcer, which is the FBI. That's where we start. But now, how do we fix these things, as you were asking? Well, we cannot make the mistakes that were made back in 2017 when Trump became president. He put in Pompeo at the CIA. Eventually Comey, he had to replace Comey, but should have let go of Comey much earlier. But my point is, Pompeo, we had Daniel Coates in the Director of National Intelligence. We had William Sessions in the Department of Justice. But looking at these three institutions, what happened? Pompeo selected Gina Haspel to be his deputy, basically a Brennan protege. It was essentially the CIA running Pompeo, the CIA bureaucrats running Pompeo, Brennan's people running the CIA under Pompeo. With the DNI, Daniel Coates was basically being run and told by the bureaucracy. It was Clapper's bureaucracy for all purposes. It was as if Clapper was in charge of the DNI under Coates. It was as if Brennan was in charge of the CIA under Pompeo. In the Department of Justice, basically William Sessions recused himself, and for all matter of fact, it was Rosenstein who was basically running the Department of Justice, who was part of the problem of the prior Obama administration, deep state cabal. So going forward, should Trump win in this election and be endorsed at the House, the Senate, basically the electoral votes confirmed, certified, and sworn in and become president, he cannot make those mistakes. He's going to have to put in people who are going to go into these institutions and begin to change them, fundamentally transform them, to begin to take out all the deep rot that's in there, all these political appointees that have rolled in as civil servants, and all these high-level civil servants who have undermined the rule of law, like the 51 Intel officials who signed that letter saying that, the Hunter Biden laptop was basically Russian disinformation, which we all know is a lie.
Right. The SES is the rot, in my opinion, right? The senior executive services, they are unimpeachable. They're untenable. They run roughshod with impunity. They seem to be, or without impunity, they seem to be able to do whatever, say whatever, and they get paid very, very well to destroy and build a gallows for true freedom-fighting, freedom-loving American people. And, President Trump did move through this. He was addressing the Schedule F employees, if you recall, at the end of his administration. And that was about the time, of course, the whole election was hijacked and we had that transition period. And you had the then National Security Advisor O'Brien basically, I think, derail President Trump from doing what he really needed to do in order to actually save the election that was stolen from him. Can you speak to that specifically, that period of time between the election on November 3rd, 2020, and then, of course, January 6th, and then through January 20th, there was a period of time where there seemed to be some hope. General Michael Flynn, Patrick Byrne, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, they seemed to be up against strong headwinds. And I think at that time, NSA O'Brien was really a big problem.
A lot of issues during that time frame as far as the election in 2020 up until January 6th. And the most important element is President Trump had zero support from Republicans at Capitol Hill. Take, for example, the National Defense Authorization Act. President Trump foresaw what was happening with social media, and he demanded that they put a clause in there to repeal Section 230. When they did not put that clause in there, he vetoed the NDA. It was a veto. What happened then was the House overturned the veto and put that law into motion. So Trump did not have any support at all whatsoever from the Republican establishment. And consequently, at the same time, all these other actors that were either appointees or actors outside saw the writing on the wall that there was no way that Trump was going to be able to overturn this fraudulent election, and they didn't want to jump in and become a casualty themselves. So they bailed on Trump. And that's why basically anything that Trump wanted to do, he had zero support at all. Take, for example, William Barr basically did absolutely nothing for the DOJ to investigate the election shenanigans.
That's right. It seems that everybody that President Trump placed around him ultimately ended up being the Judases in the room. There wasn't just one. Or perhaps you could point the finger to just one, but there were multiple Judases in the room. And my concern at this point is that I don't see it changing. And again, you know, if you've paid attention to any of the information that President Trump has been talking about lately, it almost doesn't even sound like the President Trump of 2016. And I guess I'm asking things about his position on building the wall. Now he's talking about using, artificial intelligence and biometrics to actually surveil who's coming over the border, as opposed to building the wall. He's talking about importing illegal aliens and only returning the bad ones, and using artificial intelligence to further the economy and the economic boom here in America. These are things that are antithetical to the Trump of 2016, at least by what we're hearing. Now, I don't believe he's detailing to the public all the pieces in the plan, but at a high level, these are sort of alarm bells to people that have been hardcore MAGA are hearing. And I'm wondering if you're hearing the same.
Absolutely. We're seeing positions Trump has taken that has deviated from some of the core ideologies of the MAGA movement, the MAGA 2024 movement for that matter. And the question that arises here is, who is he listening to? Who's advising him? What is the circle of people that have the most influence with him? Which leads us to begin to question is, who potentially would he nominate to some of these positions of cabinet leadership and government leadership positions should he be president? And, if he goes down the road of placing individuals in the administration who are going to undermine some of these mega ideologies and mega platform and issues, we could find ourselves in another Trump administration that suffers the same fate as his first administration.
Right. And so I actually want to play something right now because I think that's, whoops, 1 second. I want to get it on screen here. I'm concerned because, this is something that we continue to see over and over again. And for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense to me why he would tact in this particular direction. So let's just take a listen to these comments he made recently. Dylan Allman put this out on Twitter on August 15th last week. And he asks, is Trump trying to lose this election? Not only does he still refuse to acknowledge his failures around COVID, but he wants to be praised for his response. Mr. President, ventilators took more lives than they saved. Masks were proven to be ineffective. Operation Warp Speed. Let's just play this and I'll get your response on it here.
So we never really got the credit we deserved for that with the ventilators and all of the different things that we did, the outfits, a lot of things. We were producing in New Hampshire and different places, masks. We had mask factories opening. So we never.
So again, this is something that people that have, now that the science is in, we understand what's going on. People are understanding that masks didn't work. Ventilators killed people. Remdesivir, as the WHO even pointed out in their Ebola trials in 2018 and 2019, was forever forbidden to be used again because they saw that remdesivir killed more people than Ebola did in those trials. Yet Fauci pointed to those trials and said, that's what we're going to use to save the COVID patients. And it did the exact opposite. It killed COVID patients in the hospital. Something is not adding up here. Is this a failure on the people giving him information, or is this by design feeding President Trump misinformation? What do you think? Or has he sold out? I mean, people are starting to ask that question.
Well, what we have seen and continue to see is the Republican establishment does not like Trump, never liked Trump, and never supported Trump. To this date, you can only count the number of the Republicans in the Republican Party, the Republican Party leadership, congressional delegation, even state legislators and governors who actually support President Trump. So for the most part, tapping into the echelon of Republican leaders, he is going to run into a lot of people who don't necessarily espouse the beliefs of the MAGA agenda, or for that matter, that the election was stolen in 2020, or that there were election shenanigans that happened in 2020. I mean, look at the House. The House has been totally, completely ineffective, House of Representatives, as far as pushing forward the conservative values that a Republican electorate want the House to put forward. And at the same time, we see some of these issues popping up in the campaign where the advice that either Trump is getting or the information he's being fed does not necessarily align with his own conservative principles.
That's alarming because, again, this train has left the station. Kamala Harris is being made out to be looking like the next Obama. Clearly, the public is not on her side. I mean, yes, there are people who want to see a Kamala presidency because she's a woman. I'm all for a woman president, but more importantly, I'm all for the best person to be president, whether it's a man or a woman. I don't care. Two genders, it's going to be one or the other, but I don't care who it is, as long as it's the best person for the job that's going to serve the American people and follow the Constitution. And right now, if I look at the way we are governed, we have agency government. We have, every one of these agencies, whether it's the National Institute of Health, it's the CIA, the FBI, the CDC, the FDA, the Department of Education, Department of Energy, the DOD, they're all for-profit agencies. They have Dun & Bradstreet numbers, and they have an interest to their stakeholders. And those are people that run those agencies were never elected by me or you, Pedro. They were placed by the government, that's by the elected official in place. And those elected officials many times have stock in the variety of industries that they're appointing the people to head those agencies and make decisions that they shove down the throats of the American people. To wit, COVID. We were masked, mandated out of existence almost. And in a lot of the corporations, they were COVID bioweapons shot, literally with an injection out of existence. The airline industry has been decimated by the COVID mandates. So again, this is very concerning because we're listening to the advice of bureaucrats that were not chosen by we the people. Do you think that this has been the design by the deep state gangsters all along to get us to this point where we just accept an agency government and think that's constitutional?
Well, we have a federal bureaucracy, the executive branch, that has become so powerful that their power transcends the power of a president. At the same time, the counterbalance, the three branches of government, you have the legislature and the judiciary. The legislature has been failing to do their oversight and allowing this federal bureaucracy to just run amok. They defy congressional subpoenas. They defy congressional demands. They basically sometimes rewrite laws, and Congress does nothing about these issues. So that has empowered this federal bureaucracy to run rampant and do sometimes as they please. But if I can interject, one issue here is the number of American people that are actively engaged, focused, and know about these issues. It's probably a very, very small percentage. Look, for example, the recent figures for the primaries that we've had throughout this year. We just had one in Oklahoma in June. In the congressional district that I'm in, Congressional District 1, only 15% of registered Republican voters showed up to vote. A week earlier in South Carolina, the entire state, registered voters, 13.5% of the voters showed up to vote. I just recently had a conversation with somebody in Illinois. Their figure was close to like 15 to 20%. And this is what's going on countrywide. And I'm here in the Midwest, Oklahoma. I can tell you that if I go out and have a conversation with people, I have some people who, if I mention DOJ, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I can name a 3-letter agency. Some of these people have no idea what I'm talking about. But if I talk about the fast food, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, the media is definitely part of the intelligence industrial complex, and they've been carrying the water for the messaging of these deep state gangsters for over 100 years now. That is very, very clear. We're going to take a quick break. We're here with Pedro Israel Orta, and he has a new movie out, Deep State Gangsters. Fascinating conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about the Trump transition team when we get back right after this break. But again, we can't forget our January 6th political hostages right now. Jake Lang, this is his network that we are on, Blessed News. Steel News runs on this network. And Jake, big shout out to you. You have been through it and continue to stand in the face of tyranny, and you won't back down. So this commercial break is for you, Jake, and for all the J6 prisoners.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a January 6th political prisoner rotting away in horrible conditions? January 6th patriots are subject to cruel and unusual punishment every day and kept imprisoned for nearly 3 years without trial. These American heroes have to survive inhumane conditions where they lack basic food nutrients, clothing, and hygiene. Joe Biden's corrupt Department of Justice and FBI Gestapo has been making sure the families of these brave patriots are suffering as well. The breadwinner has been ripped out of the home, and these young families are being extorted thousands of dollars a year to keep up with commissary costs for their J6 prisoner. Many families have been completely devastated, missed mortgage payments, and kicked out of their homes, and even the family car repossessed. The ongoing battle these families face to stay afloat and support their loved ones in prison is in desperate need of our help. You can now sponsor a January 6th family to help support them in their greatest time of need. Sponsor J6.com is a new organization started by January 6th political prisoner for 965 days, Jake Lang, ensuring 100% of funds made go to Patriots commissary accounts. By becoming a sponsor of a J6 family, you can ensure one of the nearly 200 currently incarcerated J6 prisoners is properly clothed and fed. Sign up today to give the vital help these families need and make a real impact in the lives of our POWs. Head to sponsorj6.com and support our patriots.
Hi, I'm Ann Vandersteel. I want to talk to you a little bit about your health. Part of my daily routine is to get up in the morning and get a little exercise on. If I have time for a mile or 7, doesn't matter. I get out the door every single day. It's important to get my body moving and get that oxygen flowing through my brains. What is also equally important is what I put in my body after I exercise. I rely on vandersteelhealth.com, where I have a delicious selection of superfoods and other supplements. But first and foremost for me are my superfoods. I have a delicious shake every single day. It is organic, all made in the United States of America, non-GMO, never processed before, dehydrated superfoods. And when they reconstitute with water, milk, or whatever juice you like, it makes a delicious, healthy, plant-based protein supplement. And I say supplement because, frankly, I use this as a meal replacement. This is what's helped me lose the last 20 pounds of COVID. I'm back down to my fighting college weight, fitting in my college clothes, and feeling better than ever. So go to vandersteelhealth.com. and get your delicious superfoods. Get on the transformation program with us. It's a 30-day kickoff, and it will get your day starting out great. And watch the weight just fall off. Watch the energy increase, the brain fog lift, and of course the ancillary benefits in your hair, skin, and nails. All these things, you are what you eat. Remember that. Go to vandersteelhealth.com.
Sorry to burst your bubble yet again, but even more awful personnel decisions are being made by the Trump campaign. It's just one bad decision after another after another. Where is the Mexicans are rapists, Trump? Remember that speech? Not the illegal immigrants. The Mexicans are rapists. He said, I want no more Mexicans who are raping and killing our people, and I will build a wall to keep them out. Nowhere in that speech did he say we love immigrants as long as they're legal. In fact, if you search the transcript for that speech, there is no mention of legal immigration at all. So aside from the obvious change in tone, like this.
Para todos los latinos americanos, gracias por venir aquí y soportar al presidente Trump.
He, or at least his team under Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, are still giving more subtle middle fingers to his base by filling the transition team to the brim with these ridiculous establishment Republican insiders. Over the weekend, Trump announced his transition project, his transition team, the people responsible for readying the next administration for action once they win. Of course, everyone knows who Eric Trump is, honorary chair, Don Jr., honorary chair. Fine, I wouldn't call them establishment. J.D. Vance is another story, but it's the lesser known names that are a little more interesting. Linda McMahon has been named here as the co-chair of the transition team. Well, who the hell is she? She used to serve as the chair of the America First Policy Institute, or AFPI, which may sound based America First, but really they're just an old guard, like establishment garbage pail with a cool name. Ian Ward in the Politico has a surprisingly well-sourced article detailing how AFPI is quite literally the arch nemesis of the actually based Project 2025. Until now, these two groups, P25 and AFPI, were both looking to, you could even say competing, to organize and prepare the best personnel and the best policy for Trump's second term to avoid the messy transition of the first one. But P25 is made up of the diehard MAGA loyalists, and we all know what the Trump campaign did to them. Disavow, 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 6 disavowals of Project 2025. And AFPI, on the other hand, is the hawkish foreign policy, economically libertarian-coded think tank. They are the ones who Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles ended up going with as essentially a Trojan horse to get their favorite establishment dinosaurs back in control of personnel so that they could sabotage the Trump agenda. In other words, it was essentially a battle between two visions for Trump's next administration, the MAGA heads or the establishment heads. And Team Trump went establishment. Team Trump chose AFPI. AFPI won. But it gets even worse. Linda McMahon is only a figurehead. She's literally like just some rich billionaire who founded WWE with her husband. Now they lead this glamorous life, and she's got much better things to do than get bogged down with policy specifics. And so the woman running the show is her bestie, this woman named Brooke Rollins. Brooke Rollins is really like the worst case scenario. And she's essentially been given the de facto reins of the transition. She's the one who, during the first term, had them shelve the immigration bill. The immigration bill at the end of 2019, the whole reason anyone voted for Trump, so that they could pass the fucking First Step Act, otherwise known as jailbreak, so that, they could get the black vote. She was instrumental in getting Trump to go and work with Kim Kardashian so that they could say to black people, hey, we're gonna let everyone out of jail. And some of these people got out of jail and went on to murder people. She is so bad. She was CEO, one of these boss bitches. She was CEO of this free market think tank called the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And from this same wonderful Texas Public Policy Foundation is this other boss bitch. Her name is Heidi Overton, who is set to be made policy director. She is literally a card-carrying Democrat policy director of transition. she's a Democrat medical lobbyist, and she's the one who's in charge of policy over at Trump's transition team. I don't see how it gets worse. I literally don't. What are they thinking? What are they doing? And most importantly, why are they doing it? Because it's not to make America great again, or anything remotely related to why Trump's voters would ever vote for him. We should let people know these are all the people. They're all connected to the anti-Project 2025 AFPI, and they are all intentionally torpedoing our movement.
Well, there you have it. Pretty explosive stuff there. Don't really know. Is this more confusion? Is this message coming from Chris Owens meant to derail and basically obfuscate the truth of who's who in the zoo? Is his message on point? Is he really carrying the water for the true MAGA crowd? Is he calling out the right people? I mean, look, President Trump loves the UFC. That has never changed. He has been a big supporter of UFC, and they love him. What is going on? There is so much misinformation, so much disinformation flying around on both sides, meant to confuse the architects of the plans on each side of this equation, if you will. This is the war that we're in. We're in information war, which is right there up there with spiritual warfare, because the spiritual warfare is really what's guiding this information war. We're at the highest level of warfare. We don't need bombs flying. We don't need bioterrorism flying, although that is part of the plan to depopulate us. What we need is to understand who the real truth tellers are and what the real messaging in. And if President Trump has walked away from the true MAGA agenda of building the wall, and, truly doing a mass deportation. He says he's going to, but there's just so much other messaging going on. And we're not sure if he's doing it for the benefit of the other side that he's trying to pull into the tent. Hard to tell. But to talk about that and round this out is Pedro Israel Orta, who is also behind and launching the Deep State Gangsters movie. So, Pedro, that was a pretty wild video from where I'm sitting, just breaking today all over the internet. Thoughts on what Chris Owens said?
Truth. I mean, we're dealing with entrenched political actors who want power. I mean, Washington is a city of basically just a lot of people who want power because it puts them in positions to benefit their pockets predominantly. At the same time, it benefits them to put themselves in a better position for future jobs. People are jockeying, setting themselves up to try to capitalize on a Trump administration win. And the same thing is happening within the Democratic Party. You have a lot of backstabbing, setting themselves up, positioning themselves, should they're able to have Kamala elected, so that they can gain positions of power. I mean, we saw this in the election in 2020 with the laptop letter 51. Michael Morell said it in a congressional hearing. He did it because he wanted Biden to win, and he was hoping to have an administrative position in the new administration. We see the same thing going on today. You will see Republicans at high levels basically backstabbing each other, like this feud between Project 2025 and the other group, to try to basically position themselves to capitalize on a Trump win.
Yeah. I know people that have put their resumes into Project 2025. And these are people I have respected, had interviewed on my show many times. In fact, somebody, I don't want to put them on blast per se, but they just posted an article, and eventually I'll do the interview with them. This is really disconcerting because it seemingly doesn't make sense. Look, we all know about West Exec, or many people know about West Exec, that existed during the Trump administration, literally across the street from the White House, which was the very same people that came in with Joe Biden into this regime, because I refuse to call it an administration. It's a regime. And, this is what you want to do if you want to be prepared, fully loaded to step in. Do you think Trump has been a made man? And the reason that we're seeing all of these illegals being allowed to flood across the border is because they need bodies to effectively steal an election now. I mean, look, they're giving them Social Security numbers, I-10 numbers. And according to our own U.S. code, you can define whatever nationality you want to be if you think you are that. It is written into the code. I've actually done shows about this with Brandon Joe Williams, and recently somebody else was talking about this, is you can be whatever you choose to be if you really believe you are. So you could come across the border and say, I really believe I'm a U.S. citizen, and that allows you to vote in the election. This is insanity how all of this has been architected. But again, the U.S. code is a overlay of corporatocracy on top of a republic defined by our Constitution. So it's just fraud. In other words, they've stolen our republic at this point. Do you think that perhaps Trump's going to be allowed to be the winner and we're going to have a controlled House and Senate so that effectively he's an executive order president, making him a benevolent dictator for another 4 years to erase those executive orders when the next regime comes in?
I'm very concerned about the ability to have a secure election in which the winner is decided by the actual votes, whether paper ballots or machine votes. I have no doubt that some of the shenanigans we witnessed in 2020, that they're going to try to do again in 2024. And with this influx of high numbers of illegal immigrants who have been known to somehow register to vote, absolutely there's a predominant risk there that they will capitalize on those figures, those people, to generate even more votes and negate potentially the will of the people. And on another note, let's say Trump does win the election. Well, the reality is that the Republicans will need to win the House and the Senate.
Right.
If we don't win the House and the Senate, I mean, Trump is basically going to be neutered. His appointments at the Senate are going to be basically stonewalled. He may not be able to get his appointees through. So that's going to create just havoc where the deep entrenched bureaucrats who are literally going to be running these bureaucracies until nominees can be put in positions, sworn in, will run these institutions. And on another note, as far as the House, that's where basically the budget is determined. I mean, the ability of Trump to legislate his agenda through the House is going to be nearly impossible unless the Republicans win the House.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It kind of makes President Trump sort of a benevolent dictator, if you will, in my humble opinion. And that is not a title that anybody should really want. They shouldn't want to be called a benevolent dictator. Somebody who I believe can actually be effective in terms of eradicating the intelligence industrial complex and bringing it to heel into something manageable and effective for truly national security is General Michael Flynn. He was, of course, evicted after 3 weeks. He was falsely impugned and almost imprisoned. They'd still like to throw him in prison. Fortunately, President Trump gave him a pardon, and he is immune from that. But I still think that there's forces out there that would like to take him down, and there's active campaigns probably in that order, which is quite unfortunately quite disturbing. But anyhow, on that note, you are running this particular movie coming out, Deep State Gangsters. I believe this is going to be one for the ages. Clearly, people need to see this. This is a very, very important movie. If you are not aware of it, please get aware of it and start to share this everywhere. Hit the website, deepstategangsters.com, and make sure that you are actually out there sharing this information. Pedro Israel Orta, it is a pleasure to have you on this evening. I certainly appreciate what you have done to get this information out. You are, in my opinion, a truth teller. You are unafraid of giving the hard news. It's kind of a black pill, some of this content we put out there tonight, but I think it's content that people need to hear. So where's the best place for folks to follow you?
The best place to follow me is follow me at Twitter. Pedro Israel Orta is my handle. You can check out my website, pedroisraelhorta.com. You'll get details about the movie on the movie tab, also about my book that I wrote as a CIA whistleblower, The Broken Whistle, A Deep State Run Amok. You'll find it at my website. In those two locations, you'll find me easily.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pedro. Really appreciate you coming back on here or coming on this evening and spending the time that you did with us. This is unfortunately what I consider to be one of the biggest hurdles that we're going to have as a country in terms of trying to save our country. And I'm not sure if our country can really fully recover from this. It's going to take, I don't want to say a revolution, but it's going to take a revolution of the mind for people to open up and understand just how they are being subverted. The information, the truth is being obfuscated from them. And the psychological warfare is real on both sides. And it's really hard to figure out what's truth these days. But I believe you are one to be telling the truth. And some of it's the black pill that nobody wants to swallow. So to that, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ann.
All righty. And that rounds out our show this evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got a quick message from Mike Lindell reminding you about your needs for a good night's sleep. Good night, everybody.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com